You're on scene with a critically ill patient. Your hands are moving, your mind is racing, and then you realize you've missed something obvious. Not because you're incompetent, not because you don't know better, but because in that moment, with everything happening at once, you made a stupid mistake. The reality is, stupidity isn't actually about your intelligence. It's about missing the crucial information when it matters most. And if you work in emergency medicine, the environment is literally designed to make you stupid.
You on 8? You on 8? Okay, you're clear. Stand by for your base.
I'm Ross Orpet, and you're listening to Loud and Clear EMS Guiding Principles. Today, we're coming to you from FASTCAN, where I sat down with Kris Kaull right after his talk on how not to be stupid in high-stakes environments. Kris is a critical care flight paramedic, national educator, and the co-founder of EMS One. The work that has gone into trying to determine why mistakes happen has identified 7 specific risk factors that make mistakes more likely to occur. Being in a rush, information overload, working outside of your normal environment, group dynamics, the presence of an expert, tasks that require intense focus, and physical or emotional fatigue. Does that sound familiar? Those risk factors are essentially the job description for a paramedic. In this episode, Kris walks us through practical frameworks for systematizing your approach so you can minimize chaos and focus on the unknown. We talk about aviation industry lessons, the power of checklists, how to speak up when you see something wrong, and why tunnel vision isn't always bad if you have the right team structure around you. This is about building systems that make excellence inevitable, not accidental. If you're listening to this and thinking, I want to create the type of learning environment that makes my success in my career inevitable, this is exactly why we created our online community course, the Paramedic Confidence Builder. What you're about to learn in this episode is exactly the type of tools we teach and dissect in our course. If you want to learn more about the course and the community, stick around at the end of the episode. All right, let's get into it. This is my conversation with Kris Kaull on how not to be stupid when it matters most. Kris, thanks so much for joining us on the Loud and Clear podcast right after your talk here at FASTCAN. I'm Ross Orpet. I'm super excited to talk with you about this. But first, I need to know, how do you define stupid?
Oh, man. When I say stupidity or stupidity in your life, stupidity in EMS, people have all these thoughts and ideas. And I'm not talking about stupid. In fact, if you're like, what is being stupid? It's hard to define. But if we say it's the opposite of stupid, it's also not being smart. It's when we make stupid mistakes, we're making stupid mistakes because of certain factors in there. And so we're missing crucial information when it matters. And that's what happens when we make a stupid mistake. And I always use a very basic example, which is super relatable to all of us. Your mind's distracted. You have a lot of things on your list. You're going somewhere and you go to the door and you push and it doesn't go in. And then you look and you see PULL. I'm like, oh, pull. But that's a perfect example of stupidity because it's not that you can't read. It's not that you don't know how to open the door. It's because of other outside factors, you made a mistake.
Yeah, why is stupidity inevitable?
Whew, man. I think that we brush off, we underestimate how complex life is and all the distractions and things that we're working on. I read a blog years ago by a guy by the name of Shane Parrish. He does the Knowledge podcast and the Farnham Street, and he brought in a guy by the name of Adam Robinson. And they said, you know what? We can kind of distill all the reasons people make mistakes down to 7 items. And these items, it's not that you're going to alleviate all 7, but if you're just aware that there are 7 things that happen that lead to mistakes, it's just math. If you have 7 of the 7, you're going to be more likely to make a mistake than if you have 2 out of the 7.
Yeah, we work in very complex environments. So what are those 7 risk factors for stupidity?
Ooh, off the top of my head, let's see how good we are. Let's see. One is being in a rush. The second one is being information overload. One is things that require intense focus, being in a group, being an expert, or being in the presence of an expert, ironically, can be one. Fatigue. And I have another one on here. Let's see. Oh, and being outside of your normal environment. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Let's walk through these one at a time.
Yep.
So being in a rush, in emergency medicine, EMS, we work in a fairly time-sensitive environments, especially if it is a true emergency. So how can we deal with this?
You're right. You find that medicine is medicine, but people gravitate to different areas of medicine based on their personality. And internal medicine, they're like, I want all the information. I want to study it. I want to take time. I want to read it. And then I want to ask a buddy, and I want to get a second or third or fourth opinion. I'm going to get more tests, and then they have all this information, then they make a decision. You could see how they were probably that personality was in medical school. And the others are emergency medicine or out of hospital medicine, where I'm going to make the best decision I can in the limited information I have. In that environment, there's a lot of things that have to happen at once for the patient that's not stable. So you're right. Rushing allows us to make mistakes. An example that I think would be great to use here is that we have this term called RSI, where the first letter is R, stands for rapid, but really it's the goal state is to take care of their airway and ventilate them and do no harm. So is it about rapid, or is it more about airway and doing no harm? And maybe if we spend a little bit more time making sure, do we have all of our stuff? Do we have a checklist? Are we timed out? Is everybody on board? If I have a problem, what is the next step? Ironically, when we're not rushing and we're actually systematic, things go smoother. We make less mistakes.
And because things go smoother, oftentimes they go faster too.
Right.
The speaker right before you mentioned the study of checklists, and how when people started implementing checklists, we think that having to be forced to go through that will slow us down. People actually got tubes in faster.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly right. And that's one of, I think, when we have information overload, that's another one on that list. When you have so many things, and pilots have done this for years. Aviation industry, we're following in their footsteps when we say, wait, accidents occurred. You have this pilot and she may have 10,000 hours of flight time and she flies on same aircraft type every day. And yet walks through the checklist and double checks. And the other person, they're not just reading it. They're actually reading it, looking, making sure, going to the next, reading it, making sure. And yet their chances for having challenges have gone down because now I can focus on the patient, right? I don't have to remember all the drug dosages and what's. I have a checklist for those things. And then I can come over here and practice medicine. And somebody, whether it's another person that's double checking, but I can just open my mind out without having it cluttered with that.
Yeah, you can compartmentalize the standardized.
Yep.
So that you can free the rest of your mind up to see the whole picture. So that's how can we deal with rush? How can we deal with information overload? Odd environment or outside of our usual environment. I mean, that's where we work. We walk into people's homes we've never been into before. What pieces of our environment can we control?
Well, I think you nailed it, right? By definition, our environment is never normal, but there are certain things that we do. I always think of like car crash and fire departments and extrication and safety. And well, there's a way to minimize traffic crashes. We know where all extrication, we know what we need to do to disconnect batteries. We know electric cars are different than others. We have all these things in public safety that we know are true. So if we can minimize any of those things by standardizing our approach, then the car crash could be different types of vehicles. It could be down a ravine. Those are the things that are outside the norm. And then we can think creatively of how to fix that. My list is that I like to have everything. I work with a number of different partners, and some of them, everybody kind of has their like before they go, almost like a trained athlete. Some of them listen to music and it's always the same song. Others have a mental where they walk through everything, but people kind of have a routine. Others in medicine, you see them having a podcast or listen to certain music before they go on the shift.
Yeah,
clear their
pre-game.
And pregame.
Yeah.
And for me, I like, before I even check out the helicopter or anything else, I like lay out. I make my room. I'm there for 24 hours. Lay my room out. I get all my equipment ready, my own personal like flight suit. I have it all organized in the right spot. I have this routine. And then once I'm done with that, I can focus on anything else. And ironically, those times when you walk in, there's a call pending. It seems like everything in that call is scattered just because I haven't done that pre-routine.
Right.
So any pre-routines you can do to minimize any chaos only allows you to focus on the unknown.
This goes with your procedures as well, right? Setting up your procedures and your equipment in the same spot every time will control that environment and make it familiar for yourself.
I actually have been all over the US. Now we're in Canada, and I will see certain things such as the ambulances, all ambulances are set up differently in some places. That's an easy way to streamline. Bags are set up differently. Well, if I'm picking up a shift with you and I don't work in your environment and things aren't where they are, physicians work in different hospitals and things aren't the same. Right. So standardizing or organizing makes all the difference.
Yeah, it's perfect. Working in a group. Now, we work as a team, but how can we leverage the power of a team without letting it make us stupid?
Yeah, a group dynamics is one thing that's interesting because you'll have, you've seen this before where I have my personality, you have your personality, and then we're hanging out together, a third personality emerges. And so with groups, that's what happens is different dynamics. You have the one person who's kind of meek and quiet. You have the other person who's boisterous. You have the other person who's really studious and sitting back looking at everybody. And we don't always utilize everybody to their strengths in that room. Typically, the person who's speaking the loudest is the one that's heard. However, the one that's sitting back might have said, I don't know if I would do that, and they're not speaking up. That's where the challenge becomes with group, is this group dynamic, and I don't know how to speak to that group, or I don't know how to work in this dynamic. Or there's another one that's expert, so let's combine those. What if somebody in the room is an expert, and you're like, well, they have a lot more experience. By expert, I mean perceive that they know more than you. Okay, so, well, you have medical degree, you clearly know more than me, and we're in this call. I'm like, what do you think? And you say something like, oh, they probably know more than I do on this, even though on the back of my mind, something doesn't feel right. And so between having group dynamics and or being that expert where people don't question you or double check what you're doing, or you don't feel confident enough to double check them, those can just lead to potential errors or mistakes.
Yeah, in the aviation industry, specifically when you have that power differential dynamic, when you're like an expert, maybe someone less experienced, there's the principle of inquire, advocate, assert. So first, maybe you ask a question like, why are you thinking about things this way? Or should we maybe think about doing this? And if they don't pick up on the hints, then you maybe advocate. I really think that this might be the best way forward. And then if it's truly unsafe, and you need to get to that, they're still not picking up on you, then you get to that assert. No, really, this is unsafe. We need to do something different.
I love that. And that's a trained behavior, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to give away my voice to others who I think might be better or more experienced or have higher education than I am. And yet what we're finding, and that's why they listed these 7 things, is that person often that didn't speak up saw something that was wrong.
So next we're going to talk about when things are so intense and your focus needs to be like dialed in. That's another spot we make mistakes or we're stupid.
Yesterday we had a pre-session. Pre-session was a high fidelity simulation. So you have the mannequin that breathes and makes things, and it was a complicated scenario-ish, meaning that it was a fallen wildland firefighter soot in the mouth, not breathing very well. There were some traumatic injuries, but really, if they don't get a definitive airway soon, other things are going to happen. They're working through it. You had a lead who was at the ALS level, and you had 2 people who were at the BLS level. They're all working together. But the ALS individual was so task saturated that while they were talking to their counterparts, they said, hey, can you start an IV? Can you drop these drugs? Can you do this? And then I saw that lead focus on getting all their stuff ready. And the other partner said, is this the right medication, right dose? They were doing the right thing. And that person was task saturated. They weren't focused on it. Right? And she asked again, but he didn't hear it. She's like, okay. She's getting ready. I'm like, wait, you have another person. Just double check with the other person. He said 10 milligrams of this dose. It's 10 milligrams in 2 milliliters. And just verify with one other person. It doesn't have to be that other, right? And because the whole idea is situational awareness. And she was right. Her medication dosage, everything was correct. But I'm like, these are the times, and this scenario was an example of, hey, that person is focused. And once again, that's the flip side, is that while they're focused on what they do, you don't want to distract them.
Yeah.
Because they're setting up everything for a high risk, event of intubating, and what if they have to cry again? So they're walking through their stuff. And yet that adds all these other dynamics where this other person was starting to potentially administer medication that could be wrong.
Sure.
They were, for those who are listening, they did a fantastic job on this. But our learning point there was, there's a number of people who can double check, and being task focused or so focused. The things are utilizing everybody else to delegate, have somebody who's stepping back, who sees the whole picture when the one person is tunnel vision. Tunnel vision isn't necessarily a bad word. It's what allows you to do things at a high level of excellence. Tunnel vision without the surroundings, without anybody else seeing the big picture, that's where you fall in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. You need people tunnel visioned on certain aspects of the call, and then you need somebody stepping back and seeing the whole picture.
Exactly right.
Yeah, that sounds like such a great learning point in that scenario.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. The last point you had in these 7, this list of 7 ways we make stupid mistakes is physical and emotional fatigue. Tell me how in your own life you kind of help address your fatigue.
Well, my favorite one that I share with others is that I am a pleaser. I'm a high achieving pleaser. So I love to say yes to things, and I love to help. And what ended up doing is that my tank was so low that I was operating at 0 or 10 or 15%, trying to give 100%. And it seems selfish to me when I said no. And yet the truth is, if I could give 100%, if my tank's 100%, I could give so much more. And it's hard internally. So I'll give another example. The new mom, and she has a baby. She's not sleeping. Every time the baby cries, she wants to feed, to do all those things. And you step back, you're like, you know what? If somebody could watch the baby for 4 hours, 5 hours, and the mom just slept, how much more responsive and proactive would the mom be? Right? Simple example, but they don't see it like that. They're like, the baby needs me. I'm the only help they have. I'm going to do that. But they're operating at 0 tank. That's what we do in the industry where we give back to others. And so one of the things, and probably my most important that met with me, is when a mentor said, Kris, you got to stop saying yes to all the good things in life so you have bandwidth for the great.
Oh, I love that. Awesome. Thank you, Kris, so much for sitting down with us and doing a great talk.
Oh, man, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
This bears repeating. Stupidity isn't about intelligence. It's about missing the crucial information when it matters most. And in EMS, you're operating in an environment where multiple risk factors just stack the deck against you on every single call. You're rushed. You're managing information overload. You're walking into unfamiliar environments. You're working in groups with complex dynamics. You're often around perceived experts. You're managing tasks that require intense focus. And all the while, you're dealing with physical and emotional fatigue. That's just the operating reality of this job. The question is, what are you going to do about it? So here's what matters from this episode, what I want you to take away. Standardization beats improvisation. Checklists aren't about slowing you down. They're about being systematic. Aviation has proven this for decades. When you standardize your approach, you actually free up your mental bandwidth to handle what actually requires creative problem solving. Set up your equipment the same way every time. Organize your bags identically. Build routines that become automatic so your mind can focus on the patient and the unexpected. Speak up in groups. The presence of experts or strong personalities doesn't eliminate your responsibility to question what feels wrong. Use the framework: inquire, advocate, assert. Inquire first with questions. Advocate if needed, and assert if it's truly unsafe. That voice in the back of your mind that says something doesn't feel right, listen to it. Someone needs to be brave enough to double check, and that someone is you. For more on this framework, go back and listen to our previous episode entitled Why 2 Paramedics Watched Their Trainer Nearly Kill a Patient and Said Nothing. Next, we need to manage tunnel vision strategically. Look, task saturation happens, and when someone is deeply focused on a high-stakes procedure, that's exactly where they should be, not distracted by other things. But that means someone else needs to maintain situational awareness of the entire scene. So assign roles. Know who's tunneling in and who's scanning out. Both are necessary, just not from the same person at the same time. Finally, protect your capacity. You can't give 100% when you are operating at 15%. Kris said it perfectly. Stop saying yes to all the good things so you have the bandwidth for the great things. This applies to your schedule, your commitments, and your energy management. This industry rewards self-sacrifice, but depleted providers make worse decisions. So take care of yourself first, because only then can you optimally take care of others. Look, mistakes are inevitable. The math is just against you. But stupid mistakes, the ones that happen because you missed information you shouldn't have, those are reducible. Maybe not eliminable, but reducible. Excellence in this job isn't about being perfect. It's about building systems that make mistakes less likely and creating a culture where others catch what you miss. You already have the clinical knowledge and you know the protocols. The gap between competence and performance is execution under pressure, and that's exactly what we can train. So here's your challenge. Pick one principle from this episode, just one, and build a system around it this week. Standardize something. Create a pre-procedure routine for yourself. Practice speaking up. Assign awareness roles explicitly on your next procedure. Small changes compound. That's how you become the provider others rely on when things get chaotic. And this is exactly why we created our online community course, the Paramedic Confidence Builder. Our foundational lectures teach you decision-making frameworks, stress optimization, leadership under pressure, and mental simulation techniques that transform anxious providers into calm, competent leaders. And after each lesson, we have practice exercises designed to take what you just learned and put it into action, deliberately building your confidence and operational skills one exercise at a time. Because despite the well-known phrase, knowledge does not actually equal power. It is not until we have put that knowledge to action that we gain the true benefit of what we just learned. And inside the Paramedic Confidence Builder is a community of like-minded paramedics, learning together and from one another, discussing difficult cases, struggles, and wins, because you get more of what you surround yourself with. When you immerse yourself in this type of community and surround yourself with motivated peers who will push you, improvement becomes inevitable. If that sounds like the type of community you want to be a part of, head over to emspodcast.com to learn more. Thanks for listening to Loud and Clear EMS Guiding Principles. If you haven't already, please leave a review. It really does help the show. Like, subscribe, tell a friend, and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn. I'm Ross Orpet. Stay competent, stay confident, and stay safe, because what you do matters.